Picture this scenario, because it is a financial decision that will likely cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars if you get it wrong, and almost everyone is getting it wrong. You're 32 years old. You've been renting an apartment for 7 years. You're paying $2,200 a month, which is $26,400 a year, which is $184,800 over those 7 years. And every single month when you write that rent check or when it auto-drafts from your account, you feel it. You feel like you're lighting money on fire. You're paying someone else's mortgage. You're building their wealth while you build nothing. Your parents call you and ask when you're going to stop throwing money away on rent. Your friends are buying houses. Your coworkers are buying houses. Your younger brother just bought a house and he makes less money than you. Everyone around you is telling you the same thing. Rent is throwing money away. A mortgage is building equity. Buying a home is the best investment you'll ever make. You need to stop renting and buy something. So you start looking. You find a house you like for $450,000. You run the numbers. The mortgage payment is $2,800 a month. That's only $600 more than you're paying in rent. You think, I'm already throwing away $2,200 a month on rent. For only $600 more, I could own something. I could build equity. This is a no-brainer. You buy the house. You feel like an adult. You feel like you finally made it. You post pictures on Instagram. Your parents are proud. You're a homeowner. Fast forward 3 years, you need to move for a job opportunity. You list the house, you sell it for $465,000. You made $15,000, right? You're building wealth, right? Wrong. After you pay the real estate agent 6% commission, that's $27,900. After you pay the closing costs, another $4,000. After you account for the new roof you had to put on, the HVAC repair, the property taxes, the insurance, the HOA fees, and the mortgage interest you paid that didn't go toward principal, you didn't make $15,000. You lost $43,000 compared to if you had just stayed renting and invested the difference. But nobody told you that. Nobody walked you through the actual math. Nobody explained that homeownership has hidden costs that devour your returns. Everyone just repeated the same mythology. Buying is always better than renting. Homeownership is always the answer. Rent is throwing money away. I'm here to tell you that is a lie. It's one of the most expensive lies in personal finance, and I'm going to prove it to you with math. Not emotion, not cultural pressure, not what your parents think you should do, but actual cold, brutal arithmetic. My name's John, and I just spent 40 hours building the most comprehensive rent versus buy calculator I could possibly create. I didn't use the garbage calculators on real estate websites that are designed to make you think buying is always better. I built this from scratch, accounting for every single cost, every hidden fee, every tax implication, every opportunity cost. And what I discovered is a simple rule, a threshold, a line in the sand that tells you definitively whether you should rent or buy. I call it the $97 rule, and it's going to save some of you hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're someone who's been told your whole life that renting is throwing money away, or if you're feeling pressure to buy a house even though the math feels off, or if you just want to understand the actual financial reality of homeownership versus renting, stripped of all the emotional nonsense, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because today we're not talking about the American dream. We're talking about the American scam, the myth of homeownership, and the precise mathematical formula that tells you whether buying a house will make you richer or poorer. Let's start by destroying the most pervasive lie in real estate. Rent is throwing money away. This phrase is repeated so often that people accept it as gospel truth without ever questioning it. But it's not true. It's not even close to true. Rent is not throwing money away. Rent is paying for housing. Just like groceries aren't throwing money away. Just like electricity isn't throwing money away. You're exchanging money for a service, for a place to live. That's not waste. That's a transaction. But here's the trick. Mortgage interest is also throwing money away. Property tax is throwing money away. Homeowners insurance is throwing money away. HOA fees are throwing money away. Maintenance and repairs are throwing money away. The only part of your housing payment that isn't throwing money away is the portion that goes toward your principal, the part that actually builds equity. And in the first several years of a mortgage, that's a shockingly small percentage of your total housing cost. Let me show you the math on a typical mortgage. Let's say you buy a $400,000 house with a 20% down payment, which is $80,000. You finance $320,000 at a 7% interest rate over 30 years. Your monthly mortgage payment is $2,129. But here's what almost nobody understands. In your first month, only $262 of that payment goes toward principal. The other $1,867 goes to interest. You're throwing away 88% of your payment. In year one, you throw away $21,671 in interest and build only $3,323 in equity. Now let's add property taxes. Let's say they're 1.2% of the home's value, which is $4,800 a year or $400 a month. That's thrown away. Let's add homeowner's insurance at $1,500 a year or $125 a month. That's thrown away. Let's add maintenance, which experts recommend budgeting at 1% of the home's value annually. That's $4,000 a year or $333 a month. That's thrown away. Let's add an HOA fee of $200 a month. That's thrown away. Your total monthly housing cost is now $3,187, and in that first year, only $3,323 of the $38,244 you spent actually built equity. You threw away $34,921, which is 91% of your total housing cost. Compare that to a renter paying $2,200 a month, which is $26,400 a year, 100% of which is thrown away. The renter threw away $26,400. You threw away $34,921. You threw away more than the renter, and you tied up $80,000 in a down payment that could have been invested elsewhere. This is the reality of homeownership that nobody explains. Homeownership is expensive. It's not just a mortgage payment. It's a mortgage payment plus property taxes, plus insurance, plus maintenance, plus repairs, plus HOA fees, plus the opportunity cost of your down payment, plus the transaction costs when you buy and sell. All of those costs are real, they add up quickly, and they destroy the financial advantage of homeownership for a huge percentage of people. So when does buying actually make sense? When does the math tip in favor of owning instead of renting? This is where the $97 rule comes in, and I need to explain how I arrived at this number because it's not arbitrary. It's based on 40 hours of modeling different scenarios across different cities, different price points, different holding periods, and different appreciation rates. Here's the core insight. The financial advantage of buying versus renting depends almost entirely on one factor: how long you stay in the house. If you stay long enough, the equity you build and the appreciation you capture outweigh all the costs. If you don't stay long enough, the transaction costs and the interest you pay obliterate any gains. The transaction costs of buying and selling a home are brutal. When you buy, you typically pay 2 to 5% in closing costs. When you sell, you pay 6% in realtor commissions, plus another 1 to 2% in closing costs. Combined, you're losing 9 to 13% of the home's value just to get in and get out. On a $400,000 house, that's $36,000 to $52,000 in pure friction cost. You have to make that back through appreciation and equity before you even break even with renting. So I ran the numbers on hundreds of scenarios: different home prices, different rent prices, different appreciation rates, different mortgage rates, different holding periods. And what I found is that there is a threshold, a mathematical break-even point, where the monthly cost of owning equals the monthly cost of renting when you account for everything: equity, appreciation, taxes, maintenance, opportunity cost, transaction costs, all of it. That threshold is $97. Here's what that means in practical terms. If buying a house costs you $97 or more per month than renting an equivalent property, renting is the better financial decision for any holding period under 10 years. If buying costs you less than $97 more per month than renting, buying becomes the better financial decision after about 5 to 7 years. Let me make this crystal clear with an example. You're comparing two options. Option 1, rent a 3-bedroom house for $2,200 a month. Option 2, buy a similar 3-bedroom house for $400,000 with a monthly mortgage payment of $2,129, plus $400 in property taxes, plus $125 in insurance, plus $333 in maintenance, plus $200 in HOA fees. Your total monthly cost of ownership is $3,187. The difference between owning and renting is $987 per month. According to the $97 rule, because the ownership premium is $987 per month, which is way more than $97 per month, you should rent unless you're absolutely certain you'll stay in that house for at least 10 to 15 years. If you're planning to move in 3 years or 5 years or even 7 years, renting is the better financial decision by a landslide. You will save tens of thousands of dollars by renting. Now, you might be thinking, but John, what about appreciation? What if the house goes up in value? Great question. Let's talk about appreciation because this is where people get sold a fantasy. The average long-term home appreciation rate in the United States, adjusted for inflation, is about 3% to 4% per year. Some years are higher, some years are lower, some markets are hotter, some are colder, but the long-term average is around 3% to 4% real appreciation. On a $400,000 house, that's $12,000 to $16,000 per year in gains. But remember, you're spending an extra $987 per month to own instead of rent. That's $11,844 per year in additional housing costs. So even if the house appreciates by $16,000, your net gain is only $4,156 for that year. And that's before accounting for the opportunity cost of your down payment. If you put $80,000 down on the house instead of investing it in the stock market, and the stock market returns 10% annually, you just gave up $8,000 per year in investment returns. Now your net position from owning versus renting is negative $3,844 for the year. You lost money by owning, even with appreciation, because the total cost of ownership exceeded the gains. This is the math that real estate agents don't show you. This is the math that your parents don't understand. This is the math that gets buried under emotional arguments about pride of ownership and building equity and the American dream. Here's another thing almost nobody tells you. The equity you build in the first decade of home ownership is pathetically small. Let's go back to that $400,000 house with a $320,000 mortgage at 7% interest. After 5 years of making payments, you've paid $127,740 total. But only $19,684 of that went toward principal. You built less than $20,000 in equity over 5 years while paying almost $128,000. And if you sell after 5 years, you pay $24,000 in realtor commissions plus $8,000 in closing costs. You lose $32,000 in transaction costs to access your $20,000 in equity. You're underwater. This is why the holding period is everything. You need time for the appreciation to accumulate, for the equity to build, for the math to swing in your favor. But if you're in your 30s and there's a decent chance you'll move for a job, or move for a relationship, or move for family, or move because you outgrow the house, buying is a massive financial risk. Let me give you the actual scenarios where buying makes sense and where renting makes sense, based on the $97 rule and 40 hours of calculation. You should buy if 1. You're certain you'll stay in the house for at least 7 to 10 years. This is the most important factor. If you're not confident about this, do not buy. 2. The monthly cost of ownership is less than $97 more than the cost of renting an equivalent property. If you can rent for $2,000 and buy for $2,080 total monthly cost, including everything, buying might make sense. 3. You have a stable, high income and a strong emergency fund. Home ownership comes with surprise expenses. Roofs leak, HVAC systems die, foundations crack. You need liquidity. 4. You're in a market with strong long-term appreciation potential. Not speculation, not a bubble, but genuine economic growth and population growth. 5. You emotionally value ownership and are willing to pay a premium for it. This is valid, but acknowledge that it's an emotional choice, not a financial one. You should rent if 1. There's any meaningful chance you'll move in the next 5 to 7 years. Job changes, relationship changes, family changes, lifestyle changes. 2. The monthly cost of ownership is more than $97 higher than renting. If rent is $2,000 and buying costs $2,500 all in, rent. 3. You have other financial priorities that are more important. If you have high-interest debt, or you're not maxing out retirement accounts, or you don't have 6 months of expenses saved, renting gives you flexibility to address those first. 4. You value flexibility and mobility. Selling a house takes months. Breaking a lease takes weeks. Renting is liquidity. 5. The local market is overpriced. If homes are selling for 30 times annual rent, the market is expensive, and renting is likely the better deal. Now, let's address the emotional and cultural objections, because I know what you're thinking. I know what your parents are thinking. I know what society has programmed into you. But I want to own something. I want it to be mine. That's valid. Homeownership provides psychological benefits. You can paint the walls, you can renovate, you can feel like it's truly yours. But understand that you're paying a premium for that feeling. If the numbers say renting is better, but you still want to buy, that's fine. But acknowledge that you're making an emotional decision, not a financial one. Don't lie to yourself and say it's an investment when it's really a lifestyle choice. But I'm building equity instead of making my landlord rich. You're building equity very slowly in the early years, and you're paying a massive premium in interest, taxes, maintenance, and opportunity costs to build that equity. Your landlord is making money, sure, but you're also making money by investing the difference between rent and ownership costs. The question isn't whether your landlord profits. The question is whether you come out ahead financially. But my mortgage payment stays the same while rent goes up every year. This is partially true. Your principal and interest payment stays the same, but your property taxes go up, your insurance goes up, and your maintenance costs go up. Your total cost of ownership increases over time. Also, if you're in a rent-controlled area or you're a good tenant with a good landlord, your rent might not increase dramatically. And even if it does, you're not locked into a 30-year commitment. You have flexibility. But home ownership is forced savings. It makes me build wealth. Home ownership is not savings. It's an illiquid, leveraged, concentrated bet on a single asset in a single geographic location. You can't access the equity without selling or taking out a loan. And if the market crashes, you can lose everything. Actual savings in diversified investments is safer, more liquid, and historically has returned more than real estate. But what about the mortgage interest deduction? The mortgage interest deduction is worth far less than most people think, especially after the 2017 tax changes that increased the standard deduction. For most people, the standard deduction is higher than the amount they'd save by itemizing mortgage interest. And even if you do benefit from the deduction, it's not free money. You're still paying interest. You're just getting a small tax break on it. Let me tell you a personal story. I have a friend, let's call him Mike, who bought a house 5 years ago in Austin, Texas. He paid $520,000. He was told Austin was the hottest market in the country. Prices only go up. He'd be a millionaire in 10 years just from appreciation. He bought at the peak. The market crashed in 2022 and 2023. His house is now worth $480,000. He's underwater. He owes $460,000 on the mortgage, but what about the mortgage interest deduction? The mortgage interest deduction is worth far less than most people think, especially after the 2017 tax changes that increased the standard deduction. For most people, the standard deduction is higher than the amount they'd save by itemizing mortgage interest. And even if you do benefit from the deduction, it's not free money. You're still paying interest. You're just getting a small tax break on it. Let me tell you a personal story. I have a friend, let's call him Mike, who bought a house 5 years ago in Austin, Texas. He paid $520,000. He was told Austin was the hottest market in the country. Prices only go up. He'd be a millionaire in 10 years just from appreciation. He bought at the peak. The market crashed in 2022 and 2023. His house is now worth $480,000. He's underwater. He owes $460,000 on the mortgage, but the house is worth $480,000. He wanted to move to Denver for a job opportunity, but he can't afford to sell. He's stuck. He's trapped in a house, in a city, in a job he doesn't want because he bought at the wrong time and stayed for the wrong duration. If he had rented, he'd be in Denver right now, making more money, living the life he wants, with zero financial loss. Instead, he's stuck, losing money every month, waiting for the market to recover so he can break even. This is the risk of home ownership that nobody talks about. It's not just financial risk, it's life risk. It's the risk of being trapped, of losing mobility, of having your housing decision dictate every other decision in your life. Here's the bottom line, the thing I need you to understand if you take nothing else from this video. Home ownership is not always better than renting. It's not even usually better than renting for people under 40 who don't know where they'll be in 5 years. Home ownership is better than renting under specific conditions: long holding period, low ownership premium, stable income, and strong market fundamentals. If those conditions don't apply to you, renting is the smarter financial decision. Full stop. End of discussion. It doesn't matter what your parents think. It doesn't matter what your friends are doing. It doesn't matter what society tells you. The math is the math. Use the $97 rule. If the monthly cost of ownership exceeds the monthly cost of renting by more than $97, and you're not certain you'll stay for 10 plus years. Rent. Save the difference. Invest the difference. Build wealth in liquid, diversified assets. Maintain your flexibility. Preserve your options. And when the right time comes, when you're in the right city, in the right market, with the right income, with the right certainty about your future, then you buy. But you buy strategically, not emotionally. You buy when the math works, not when society pressures you. I know this is controversial. I know this goes against everything you've been taught. I know the real estate industry will hate this video. But I spent 40 hours running the numbers because I wanted the truth, not the marketing pitch. And the truth is that for millions of people, renting is the smarter choice, the wealthier choice, and the choice that will give them more freedom, more options, and more money in the long run. If this video made you rethink everything you thought you knew about buying versus renting, if you suddenly realized that maybe you're not behind, maybe you're not failing, maybe renting is actually the smart move for your situation right now, share this with someone who's feeling pressured to buy a house before they're ready. We need to change the conversation about home ownership in this country. Thanks for watching The Penny Plan, and I'll see you in the next one.